So one of the most important things that tour players work on is they want to make sure that there's a very consistent distance from club to club to club. Now what we find with most amateurs is they have a whole set of clubs, but they might have 2 7-irons and 3 8-irons, so that they're all over the map. So they got a whole set of clubs, but they don't go different distances. So we're going to look at what Jake's got here. We're going to go 9, 8, 7-iron, and we're going to let the MLM launch monitor pick up the information, and then we're going to see how your clubs are doing. So
sounds good.
Go ahead, you hit away. Okay, see what we got here. So we got 160 on that. All right, that's fine.
$167.
167. Okay, we got all those pretty good.
164.
164. So now let's change. So now we're going 8-iron.
Okay.
Now we kind of know what his average is right now with his 9-iron. So just looking at those numbers, his average was about 164. So go ahead, let's hit the 8-iron now.
Okay.
Man, you're pretty easy to do this with. You keep hitting them solid. Okay, 180. What do you do for a living? You should be, if you're that good, 179. Okay, one more 8-iron. Okay.
175.
175. So basically average was 176. So we went from our 9-iron that was 164 to 176. So we got about 12 yards. That's on the edge of a little bit too much gap, but at least it's somewhere between 7 to 10 yards. So let's see what we got with your 7-iron. Little thin, caught a little low in the face.
A little bit.
Yeah, so see, that's 176.
$188.
All right, so that's 188, so we got one more. And you're hitting those those are hit really well.
Thank you.
Let's see what that one is.
191.
Okay, so here's what we've got. So we were about at the 164, and then we went 12 yards, 176. And now we're at about, what was our average there with the
188.
Okay, so we're less than 10 yards. So we're about at 10. So there's a nice gap, but there's a bigger gap between your 9 and 8-iron than there is between your 8 and 7-iron. Okay, so ideally, and you're hitting those solids, so it's not like we're mishitting them. So once you get an idea like this and you're hitting them pretty solid, when I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, okay, as the longer the clubs get and the gap's getting narrower, you know, that's the last place you want to go. If anything, as the club gets longer, you'd like the gap to be a little wider. Okay, so I'm looking at that thinking, all right, we're going to check the lofts in your clubs. We're going to look at a couple of things so that as the club gets longer, you maintain your gapping or you get a little longer, not shorter. You're getting a little bit shorter as the club's got longer. Now, we'd have to go through your whole set and see what your 6-iron then does. and then what your 5-iron does, and then whatever the next club is, because you want that about that 10-yard gap between each one.
Okay.
That makes sense?
10 yards, yep.
Have you worked on, I mean, you guys do this all the time. Do you work on this? Do you try to gap your clubs?
I try to stay around that 10-yard gap in between clubs, but
They've been pretty good.
for the most part, yeah.
Okay, so, you know, Jake has access to this, but with this MLM launch monitor from Rapsodo, I'm telling you, there's so many things you need to work on to be a better player that have nothing to do with your golf swings. It's about understanding what your ball flight does, how far your clubs go, and making sure the gapping's right. Now, what we're gonna do next, which I talked to you about it, and it's interesting, when we get to wedges, when you start looking at the tour players, the most important thing of wedge play is trajectory control. So these guys are launching all their wedges. They're 60 degree, they're 58, 54. They're launching them all somewhere between 28 to 30 degrees. But now we're gonna look at your wedges and we're gonna look at launch angle. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Rapsodo, measure to master.